every day, wash your hands. And don't touch your face, hand sanitizer, soap and hot water after everything. When you do anything, so you're a tough guy, like to touch the mud guy, like to keep your palms dry, cough into your hands guy. I'm the clean type, like to see you clean type, trust the CDC type, scrub the surface sheet type. I'm the bad guy.
Welcome students, here we are on chapter number 7. We're looking all about hygiene and cleanliness. Some really critical things that we have to be able to not just do but be fully aware of for our full team when it comes to culinary and the hospitality industry. We need to be looking at more than just the people, the cooks and the chefs who are in the kitchen though. We need to also be aware of the fact that servers are also coming in contact with that food. The dishwasher, you may think of that as being a lowly role in the kitchen, but the fact is they are people who are chiefly in charge of a lot of the sanitized areas of the kitchen and making sure that from the plates to the equipment, the floors, the surfaces, that everything is appropriately and correctly cleaned. All these individuals handle the food directly and they touch those food surfaces every day. We can have lots of situations that can lead to the contamination of food that can cause foodborne illness, exposure to infected wounds, contact with sick people, including employees or guests coming in, or various different people who are servicing the company as well. Anytime we're touching the body, the face or hair, that's all part of the cross-contamination methods. So we can also have contaminated hands. We can have diarrhea, vomiting, jaundice, eating, drinking, smoking, chewing gum or tobacco. These are all things should never happen when we are handling food, because then we're touching our mouths and our faces as we're doing this. And any blood contact as well can cause issues too. We always want to make sure that our company is making a good first impression. And we personally should hold that as something that we hold to as well. So you want to have good personal hygiene. We all have pathogens on our skin and our hair. These can all be transferred to food and equipment that we're working with. So we need to make sure that when we're walking into our job, that we are clean, we're bathing regularly, showering, that we're keeping our hair clean, and that we are ready to be a safe individual working in the industry. We should never have dirty clothing, whether you're in the front of house or back of house. It makes a really bad first impression for guests who are seeing you, and it's just a bad impression that you're giving of your company when you're representing your company. But even worse, it carries pathogens that cause foodborne illness, and so this is a significant problem. We need to be able to prevent the spread of foodborne illness. So we have things like wearing hair coverings, wearing clean clothing, removing aprons, and removing jewelry.
Cross-contamination. It takes seconds for bacteria on raw food to spread to ready-to-eat food. So never prepare ready-to-eat foods like fruit, bread or salads with the same utensils you use for raw chicken, meat, seafood or eggs. Use separate, clean utensils every single time. Or take a second to wash everything properly with hot soapy water. And when it comes to storage, raw meats and chicken should always be stored at the bottom of the fridge. So if its juices drip, they can't contaminate other foods. Playing it safe with food only takes a few seconds, and it's always worth it.
One of the biggest problems that we can have is cross-contamination caused by our hands when we're working with food. One of the best ways that we can safeguard our food is by washing our hands. So we should be washing our hands after we use the restroom, anytime that we're handling any raw meats, especially poultry, but seafood, any other kinds of meats, anytime we're touching our hair, our face, our body, if we're sneezing, coughing, using a tissue for any reason, anytime that we're eating, drinking, smoking, chewing gum or tobacco. That's why we never do these things in the kitchen. But hand washing is one of our best defense methods that we have.
Hey everyone,
Chef Hawkes here again. So, we're looking at washing hands. How important is it to wash our hands? Well, these things right here can make the most incredible things in our kitchen, but these things can also be the most destructive things in the kitchen, especially if we're doing something where we don't have clean hands or we're cross-contaminating foods and creating foodborne illnesses. So, it's really important, but it's really important we do it correctly. So, we have 6 different things that we do. So all of our posters that we have up around the kitchen are very important to follow. So we want to go step by step. So let's do this now. So I have our 6 steps. Step number 1, turn on water to damp our hands. The soap that we have here is actually concentrated. So it needs to have a little water on your hands just to kind of get it lathering up. Then you want to get a good healthy amount of soap. And now what we're going to do, we're not just going to rinse it straight off, as you can see, for about the next 20 seconds. We want to go all over. We want to go between our fingers, both hands, up our wrists. And if we're doing anything, mixing things in bowls or anything like that, it may touch your wrist, it may touch onto your arm. So we want to make sure every step of the way that for at least about 20 seconds, we are fully lathering up. Now, next important step is we're rinsing all this off. And you want to rinse this off really well. Any residue soap can make the skin very dry. And the number of times we wash our hands in the kitchen, it will be unhealthy for us to have hands that are very dry. Now, the water needs to go off, but the first thing we need to do is we need to get ourselves dry. So we'll get sufficient enough paper towel, dry our hands off. Now with the paper towel, we turn that tap off. That whole time I actually had the hot tap on in here. With our hot tap in our kitchen, it's just warm water that comes through, so it's sufficient because it does help to get rid of the dirt that's on our hands and the debris that's on our hands. You shouldn't just wash your hands with cold water. That is not sufficient. But it shouldn't be too hot that it burns your skin or anything like that. But those are the 6 steps, and then we take this paper towel, that's going to go in the trash. So everyone has a safe day. So we should always be washing our hands after handling chemicals, taking out the garbage, clearing tables or butting dirty dishes, touching clothes or aprons, handling money, using a phone, touching a contaminated surface, any of these things. So we need to be hyper aware of what we're doing just in general when we're in the kitchen. If our phone buzzes, the temptation is always there to go and grab it out and check and see who's just messaged me, who's calling me, whatever it might be. But we need to be aware of the fact that once you do that, then if you're wearing gloves, those gloves have to come off. You've got to make sure that once you're done, you're washing your hands, and then you're going back to what you were doing again, re-gloving if necessary. But always being fully aware that every time you touch something that has possible contamination, that you're doing something about it. Also to do with our hands, we want to make sure that we're maintaining them so that they're healthy and that they're minimizing the possible kinds of contamination that we're creating. So keeping fingernails short and clean. Long fingernails are difficult to clean. There's a perfect area underneath our fingernails for bacteria and viruses to be able to be harbored. We never wear false nails. They can break off into food and be actual contaminants themselves, and they can be very difficult to clean. Never wearing nail polish, because that can actually hide the dirt that can be under our fingernails, but also it can flake off, also causing contamination issues. Any time that we're needing it, if we have any kind of wounds on our hands or arms, then we should have these things bandaged up, keeping the wounds from leaking into any foods, using single-use gloves, any finger cots, like the one that we see in the picture right here. That's a finger cot to cover over, to waterproof that area of the finger that may have a wound, and protecting those bandages just to make sure that we're not going to contaminate the food from ourselves. If bare hands at any time raise the possibility for contaminating foods, there are certain specific times that we must wear gloves. So especially when we're using RTE foods, ready-to-eat foods, we should always be gloved up. Ready-to-eat foods are foods that are not going to be heat-treated anymore, and so basically any bacteria that are on them are going to stay on them whilst those people are consuming them. So we have to make sure that we're minimizing any kind of contamination from our end onto these foods. So when you're washing produce, it's not necessary for you to have to wear gloves. And when you're handling ready-to-eat ingredients that are going to be cooked, it's not necessary to wear gloves. But if you have a ready-to-eat food, say like the sandwich we see in the picture here, absolutely, glove up. Sick employees are an issue for us as well. Sick employees can spread pathogens, the types of viruses and bacteria that can cause us to become sick. They may not be able to work with food at times as well, so let's take a look at these. So say if you have a sore throat with a fever, you cannot work with or around food. You have, especially if you work with any high-risk populations, say if you work in a nursing home, you absolutely cannot work. So if you have any one of these symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, or jaundice is when you have some yellowing around your eyes, then you cannot work. If you have a diagnosis with foodborne illness, then you cannot work, period. If you're diagnosed with hepatitis A or Salmonella typhi, you cannot work. So now let's take a look at cleaning surfaces effectively.
How to clean and sanitize a surface. To clean and sanitize a surface, start with scraping or removing food bits from the surface. Next, wash the surface with an approved cleaning solution and towel. Then, rinse the surface using clean water and a towel. Now, sanitize the surface using the correct sanitizing solution. Make sure the entire surface has come into contact with the sanitizing solution. Finally, allow the surface to air dry. How to clean and sanitize a surface.
Always remember those 3 steps. So we are brushing off the dirt and debris that's on there in the first place, but then after that we are cleaning, we're rinsing, and then we're sanitizing. Always make sure that you take care of all of those, because you can't skip any of those steps, because we need to make sure that the surface is properly cleaned and then sanitized, so that we're making sure that we're effectively cleaning it, so that way there's nothing left on there. We're also going to be taking our knives, cutting boards over to the washing area, where we're going to have a 3-pot sink. We'll talk about that in just a moment too. So we should always clean and sanitize our work surfaces after they've been used, before working with different foods, after any interruptions, and then after 4 hours. So when you first walk in the morning, we should be cleaning and sanitizing those surfaces before we get started. So we see the Sani bucket over on the right hand side here with the cloth in it. We should always have a cloth for food spills that should be separate from the cloths that we use for food contact surfaces. We should always try and keep those separated out. That way we're not going to cross-contaminate from different products that we've been dealing with. If you do have one of these cloths, then we store it in the sanitizer solution. That way it's killing off any bacteria or viruses or fungi that may be on that cloth. Keeping these various different towels separate, so that way we don't have cross-contamination. So our cleaners remove dirt, rust, stains, minerals, and other deposits They should be stable and safe for us to be able to use. Always follow the manufacturer's directions, and we're always making sure that we're storing them in a safe location as well. In our kitchen, our main storage is actually behind locked doors and a locked cabinet, a locked closet, but then the ones that we're actually using are over in our dishwash and pot wash area, completely on the opposite side of the kitchen to any food preparation areas. Always making sure that we're washing things in our 3-pot sink area, and we're not using food preparation sinks to do cleaning tasks. So we should be dividing into 4 different groups of various different chemicals. We have detergents, degreasers, delimers, and abrasive cleaners. A detergent is a general purpose or heavy duty detergent which is for removing fresh dirt, and it's used on almost anything around in our kitchen. Heavy duty ones are there to be able to remove wax, dried on dirt, baked on grease, dishwasher detergent. These are the types of ones you may have to have additional personal protective equipment, PPE, to be able to handle. Degreasers dissolve grease. They dissolve burned on grease as well. They're used for things like oven doors, range hoods, various things like that where there may be grease that has heavily burned on over time. A delimer is generally an acid cleaner. It will take off all the mineral deposits that you can have building up in certain areas, especially rust stains, tarnish, and scaling that can happen. Always read the instructions and apply them very carefully because they can be very detrimental to the wrong kinds of surfaces and to your personal skin. And then we have abrasive cleaners. So these generally have some kind of a rough scouring agent, something that's going to scrape off that dirt. So this is for hard to remove dirt. When we're removing baked on foods, just apply them very carefully. Always read those instructions because certain surfaces, especially smooth surfaces, could be damaged with these abrasive cleaners. When it comes to sanitizing, we want to make sure that our food contact surfaces are always sanitized. We can do that with either chemicals or with heat. There are certain specific requirements, though, that we need to follow. So if we are heat sanitizing, we can do that with things like tableware, various different utensils, the very hard-wearing types of products, very often made out of metals, stainless steel, silver, various things like that. So this can go into hot water. The hot water must reach at least 171 Fahrenheit for at least 30 seconds. As long as you hit 171 for at least 30 seconds, then that is sanitized. All the bacteria, mold, and viruses are killed. Make sure you check that water temperature if this is the use of sanitizing without chemicals. If you drop below this temperature, you are not sanitizing. In fact, you're creating a nice warm bath for the bacteria to grow in. When it comes to chemical sanitizing, this is generally done with things like tableware, utensils. So we actually soak them in the sanitizer, or it may be that you rinse, you swab, or you spray over the sanitizer over the products. Just for instance, our chopping boards. Our chopping boards are bigger than our sinks, but so you have to make sure that you fully spray over, you fully cover over that board once you've washed it and rinsed it and it goes into the sanitizing sink, that it fully gets covered with that sanitizer to be effective. We have to make sure that we're reading the specific requirements on our sanitizers, that we have enough contact time. Contact time is the length of time that that sanitizer is sitting on that product, on that board, on that knife, just so that we make sure that we are killing everything, that we're not leaving any possibility for contamination later on. Always read the instructions on all of our chemicals. So there are 3 common sanitizers that we use. So we have chlorine, bleach, we have iodine, and then we have quaternary ammonium, also known as quartz sanitizer. Quartz sanitizer is actually the type of sanitizer we use here in our kitchen. So we mix this with water to the very specific manufacturer's directions. That's why I have a little cheat sheet written on the top of our sanitizer containers, just so that way you don't have to read all the small instructions. You know exactly how much you need to fill up a sink to the level which is marked in our sink, and then also, if we're making one of the sani buckets, exactly how much you need to fill one of those as well. Always make sure that you follow those manufacturer's directions. Never try and make it up yourself. Never assume that you know exactly how much you need to put in there, because if you put too much in there, we can end up having chemical residue left on our chopping boards and various different equipment. Or if you don't put enough, then we're not killing anything. We're just making a nice warm bath for our bacteria and viruses to enjoy. Always using a test kit as well. We can always test to make sure that we have the right parts per million that are in that solution. So like I said, contact time is critical. Making sure that you're having the specific period of time that that sanitizer needs to be on that board, on that knife, on that piece of equipment to effectively kill any bacteria and viruses that we're dealing with. Make sure you have the right temperature for that sanitizer as well, and the right concentration, making sure you have the proper amount of water to the amount of sanitizer. If it's too high, like I said, it's going to be unsafe. If it's too low, we're just making a nice warm bath for those pathogens to enjoy. Looking at dishwasher machines. So there are various different types of dishwashers, but these can be very effective as long as they're maintained correctly to be able to clean all of our dishes and the various different smallwares and utensils, things like that. Let's take a look at one in action. Wow, do you see that guy go? But, so looking at that, and we'll look more into our dishwashing machine systems, but the fact is that guy was making sure that every plate was spread out between the splitters there. He was making sure that they were sitting correctly in the rack, and he was also pre-spraying them down as well to get rid of any dirt and debris that's sitting on those plates. That guy can work at quite a pace. The only thing that I would say is always make sure, for your own personal safety and making sure that this is being done appropriately, always make sure that rather than going faster, that you're being efficient with your time, but you're being careful to make sure that you're doing everything appropriately. The only thing that I saw for him was that he was handling the dirty plates on one side and spraying them down, putting them in the machine very efficiently, but then he went straight over to the other side and was picking up those clean plates, the sanitized plates out of the dishwasher with the same hands without washing in between. So he was now contaminating the ones on the other end. So that's why I say, always consider every movement that you make with these things to make sure you're appropriate with it. Now we need to look at 3-compartment sinks.
To clean and sanitize equipment in a 3-compartment sink, start by scraping, rinsing, or soaking any large pieces of debris off of the soiled piece of equipment. Then, wash items in the first sink with a brush, cloth towel, or nylon scrub pad to loosen dirt. Be sure to change the water and detergent when the suds are gone or the water is dirty. Next, rinse items in the second sink by dipping them in water, or for larger items, spray them with water. Make sure to remove all traces of food and detergent from the items being rinsed. If you're dipping the items, change the rinse water when it becomes dirty or full of suds. Once rinsed, sanitize the items in the third sink. And remember to change the sanitizing solution when the temperature of the water or the sanitizer concentration falls below requirements. Never rinse items after sanitizing them. The final step is to air dry the items on a clean and sanitized surface. Place the items upside down so they will drain.
In our 3-compartment sink, we're using our larger pots and pans, various things that won't necessarily fit in the dishwasher, or some things we don't want to put in the dishwasher that could actually make our dishwasher not cope so well and possibly get kind of gummed up with certain products that can come off some of these pots and pans. So we're making sure that we're cleaning and sanitizing all of our sinks first as well. With our dishwasher, we want to always make sure that we have clear spray nozzles and the food traps are all cleaned out. You can see in this individual's hands right here, this is one of the food traps which food drops into if it wasn't sprayed off before when it was being rinsed before it went in the dishwasher. We always want to make sure those are cleared out regularly. Otherwise, they can end up making the water that we're trying to wash our dishes dirtier, and so it's being less effective. Always make sure that you have the detergent and the sanitizer are both correctly filled so that the machine can do its job correctly. So, as we saw the other gentleman there, you always make sure you're scraping, rinsing, or soaking our plates and things off first of all. If you may be pre-soaking for certain things, like silverware especially, does well with pre-soaking just because otherwise it can have things get dried on in between the tines of the forks, things like that. Never overload any of these racks. If you have too many things in there where they're touching each other, those water jets will not get in between. It's not going to clean it. And so you're going to end up having to run these things through twice. Always make sure you use the correct rack for the right job. There are certain racks which are made for things like glassware. There are other ones that are made for plates, others that are made for soup cups and for coffee cups, things like that. Always make sure you have the right one. They are designed to work with your dishwasher machine so that way as they go through you have the major effectiveness of cleaning these things properly so you don't have to wash them twice. Make sure you load the racks properly. Check for dirty items that are in there. Rewash any dirty items when you're pulling them off. We're not going to put anything away dirty that should have been clean. We're also making sure that you air dry all these items as well. You don't want to put anything away that's still wet because that can end up being a harbor for bacteria and viruses and other pathogens because they like moisture, remember? Always make sure that you're checking the temperature of the water in your washing machine, your dishwasher. They generally will have a gauge on them. And the pressure as well, to make sure that there's enough pressure to be blasting the dirt off. So let's take a look at NSF. What is NSF?
Today we're going to take a short tour of an NSF-approved kitchen. In this kitchen we'll find various items approved by NSF. Orders up! Shish kebab and chicken, fries and vegetables. Let's do this. But first, I gotta scrub up. Clean hands. Let's go get some clean dishes. Clean cooking tools. There ain't no other way to make magic in the kitchen. All of my tongs and spatulas go handle up to steer clear of contamination. These ought to do. Let me grab the right cutting board for what I'm doing. let's get cooking. This needs a bit more time. Now for the good stuff. Nice and fresh, always kept at the right temperature. We have NSF certified equipment, therefore we have no worries. A place for everything and everything in its place. Time to scrub up again, from station to station, and keep it clean in between. Different food, different knife, different cutting board. No cross-contamination here. Perfect. One more wash. Meals complete. It's time to eat. NSF helps you protect your brand with the right knowledge and equipment that you need. When you know more, you worry less. Focus on what you do best.
When you look all around our kitchen, you're going to see the NSF highlight on there. It's going to be on things like our chopping boards, our hand sinks, all over our kitchen. So this is an accreditation by the American National Standards Institute, the ANSI. So this is where we have various pieces of equipment which are guaranteed to be non-absorbent, smooth, corrosion resistant, they're easy to clean, they're durable, and they're resistant to damage. This is really important because this means that they're going to be hard wearing, especially in the environment that we're working in. We're fairly tough on a lot of our equipment. We need to know that we can clean it properly so that it's not going to be a danger to other people. When we're looking at creating cleaning programs in our kitchen and in our establishment from front to back of house, we want to make sure that we have people who are organizing the cleaning and sanitizing tasks. It's critical to the food safety management systems that we have in place. This is where we actually have everything set up on a schedule so that we make sure that things are appropriately cleaned frequently and are not missed and not forgotten until the health inspector walks in and sees that there's a problem building. So we need to make sure that we create that master cleaning schedule, that we train our staff on how to clean each individual piece of equipment correctly, and also that we're monitoring it to make sure it's getting done. So when we're creating that schedule, what do we look at? Well, we look at how is that cleaning being done, and how should it be done? Is it being done correctly, or do we need to make improvements? When we're creating that schedule, we want to have the items that need to be cleaned, what should be cleaned, when the items should be cleaned, what type of cleaner we should be using on it, and who should be cleaning it, so who will be responsible for it. So let's take a look right here at a good example of a master schedule. So we actually see the actual items over on the left-hand side that will need to be cleaned. And then it's talking about what, when, and the use and who is going to be cleaning these particular items. So let's take a look at a few of these. So we have things like the floors. So this is where we need to wipe up any spills. When does that happen? Well, immediately, because that's also a danger to people slipping over as well. What are we going to use? Probably a cloth mop and a bucket, possibly a broom and dustpan, depending on whether there's dry or wet spills that have gone down there. Who's going to take care of this? Probably the busser is going to be taking care of this type of thing. If we're looking at things like walls and ceilings, then we just need to kind of wipe those when there's splashes that are made, or we're actually washing the walls at certain intervals as well. So if it's just a splash, then we're wiping that up as soon as possible, just so it won't drip off and onto any food and contaminate other foods. When we're washing walls, we're doing the food prep and cooking areas every day. We're making sure that we're using clean cloths and detergent on all of those items. The dishwash staff are the individuals who will be doing this type of thing in most establishments. When we look at work tables, so we're cleaning and sanitizing those tops between every use and at the end of the day. We're seeing the cleaning procedure, which we already learned about, where we're wiping off the debris, we're using detergent to clean it, we're rinsing it, and we're sanitizing it and allowing it to air dry. The prep cooks who are using those tables, that's exactly who's going to be cleaning those tables, because they know when and where they need to be cleaning them. The ovens, so any kind of spills in the ovens, we're going to need to wipe those up just so that we don't have anything building up. But we're also going to have a schedule in there where we're going to want to be scrubbing the interior of those ovens on a weekly basis so things don't build up over time. You're going to be using a degreaser in a lot of those instances to be able to get all of those things off. The cooks are the ones who are going to be cleaning those. That way they take ownership over those ovens as well. When we have a cleaning program, we need to make sure that all of our employees are trained in how to do these things. Everyone needs to know what's their responsibility. If we just say the oven needs to be cleaned, well then who's going to clean it? Everyone's going to assume that someone else cleaned it and it never gets done. So we need to make sure we're training them, that we're making sure that the schedule is working, make sure that that certain individuals know that they are responsible for cleaning that area of our kitchen, and then reviewing it and updating it if things need to be changed. So the effective cleaning of these items should help keep these items operating and free of any smells, noise, pests, and messiness that may cause issues as we're using them. It also prevents the transfer of pathogens, cross-contamination, something that we're always looking to avoid. It also keeps guests comfortable and safe. Pests are a problem. So pretty much anywhere where you live in the world, there are always going to be some sort of pests that are going to be trying to get in. You may have a nice warm kitchen. You may have a kitchen that has obviously water flowing into it because we use water on a daily basis. There's food in our kitchens. And so there's all of these conditions which are perfect for certain pests who might be trying to get in, whether it's very hot outside in the summer or very cold outside in the winter. We generally have a very stable environment in our kitchen and in our establishment that can harbor these things. So this is where we have to have a system that prevents and controls and eliminates any kind of infestation that we have. We call these integrated pest management. So this is where we have prevention measures if we need to, where we want to try and keep them out in the first place, but then control measures if we do have an infestation in our kitchen. We have three basic rules. We're looking to deny access, we're looking to deny the food, the water, and hiding and nesting places, and we're also looking to have a PCO, a licensed pest control operator, to help us if we do have any kind of issue.
It is essential that you keep pests out of your premises. Pests spread harmful bacteria and cause damage. It is important to check regularly for signs of pests. Look for damaged packaging, droppings, live or dead insects. Throw away any food which could have been touched by pests. You should also wash and disinfect any surfaces which may have been touched by pests. A torch can be useful to help you check properly. No pests have been found today. If you do find evidence of pests, call your pest contractor immediately.
Denying access in the first place is always the best method. Then that way we're making sure that our food is as safe as we can possibly have it. When we do discover any pests that may have entered in, we're quite possibly going to see things that could come in with deliveries or through any openings, the tiniest of openings in our kitchen. It might be through the back door. It could be possibly through any windows. If you have any open windows, they always need to be screened. But say if there's damage on that screen, pests can easily come in. They can come in through the most minuscule spaces, possibly even up through any sewer lines as well, coming back on up through the pipes. So always make sure that we're minimizing the opportunity for anything to get in. So we're going to be checking our deliveries to make sure that there's no infestations, fruit flies, or any kind of bugs or anything like that. Making sure those screened windows and vents are all in good repair. Keeping exterior openings like doors closed. Covering floor drains. Sealing any kind of cracks. Filling any kind of holes. Like you see with this pipe right here, where we've filled in that hole that was surrounding this pipe entrance, because that would easily be big enough for some roaches to be able to come on in. We also have at our back door, we have a special fan that blasts down, just in case if any flies or any flying insects want to try and fly in. It creates enough air turbulence that they're pushed away from that door entrance. So if you do discover that you have some kind of an infestation in your kitchen, then you need to work with a pest control operator. They have access to safe and current methods. This shouldn't be something that you do by yourself, where you just buy a can of Raid or something like that to spray around in the kitchen, because there are certain products which are very toxic to food that are not made to be used in kitchens. Have someone who is trained in this, who understands the best methods, so you're minimizing just how many chemicals you're spraying, that you're only spraying them down in the most the best areas with the most efficiency to get rid of any kind of infestation. Always make sure you're within all of the local regulations as well. These experts are great at applying, storing, and throwing out pesticides as well, so that you're not causing any environmental contamination either. I know today we covered a lot of areas within not just our kitchen, but front of house in our overall establishment in a restaurant or in a hotel or in a private club where you may be operating. But these are all really important things. But the great thing is, in class, in our kitchen, these are things that we're doing every single day. But it's important that we abide by all these things every time, every single day, because when it becomes habit, it stops being something that you have to think about as much. Because if you do something against what we're teaching here today, then you'll feel awkward about it. You'll know that that wasn't the right way to do it. Always make sure that you're within those boundaries, so that you're always protecting that food. Keep an eye on the people you work with as well. Make sure that they understand as well in the industry that we have to keep our food safe. I hope you guys have a great day. I look forward to seeing you all in the kitchen soon. Cheers.